News Talk 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. You're listening to the Wealth Guardians radio show with Doug Ray, helping you to retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm your host, Doug Ray. With me is Mr. Brice Payne. Good morning, Brice.
Good morning, Doug. Staying dry?
Yeah, try to.
A lot of rain this week, which good.
Good.
Yep. Good to see you here in the studio. Been a couple of weeks since we've had your company here. It's been me and Garrett holding things down for a few weeks. Been okay? Been doing good?
Yeah, I had to go visit my little brand new granddaughter.
You did, back in Colorado.
Back in Colorado.
Very good. It's going to be a Broncos fan, I'm sure.
I hope not.
She's going to be in a life of a lot of misery if she is. I can personally attest to that.
Not like the Panthers.
Yeah, exactly. They're both in the same boat. Well, congratulations on that, and had a good trip. I'm sure you got lots of good pictures and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Congratulations. Well, let's go ahead and do our Wealth Guardian service salute here. Doug, lead us off on that.
Absolutely. I just want to say to all of our service members, our veterans, and our first responders, thank you. A big thank you for everything you do, what you go through, and your families, what they have to put up with for you to do what you do. Thank you.
Here. You are in the Wealth Guardian's thoughts and prayers, and we appreciate you for what you do. All right. Now, as we are wont to do at the beginning of each show, Doug, is to allow the listeners out there to better get to know their Wealth Guardian's advisor by asking them a question of each other so that they can get a sense of who we are and what we're about on a personal level. So here's my question to you. What is your favorite movie that you've ever seen?
Yeah, that's a tough question because
there are a lot of good movies. There's a lot of bad ones, but there's a lot of good ones.
It really is. I'm going to go with a classic, Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind. Okay. Long one.
Yeah.
What is that? 5 hours or 4 hours?
It had an intermission.
That's right. That's right. My mom took me to see that. That is definitely an engaging movie. I'll go with a classic myself, Godfather.
Okay.
Widely considered one of the best movies ever made, but Godfather 2, equally as good. Hard for Martin Scorsese to top Godfather 1, but boy, he did a great job with the second one as well. All right. So there you go. Ask yourself what your favorite movie is out there. See if it syncs up with Doug's and Brice's favorite movies of all time. Let's go ahead and get to this. You know, Doug, last week when you weren't here, Garrett and I did an episode on how do you know? Questions that people ask as they're approaching retirement. How do I know? And a blank question. And we try to help them figure out how they know that. There were so many good topics on this that we decided to run it here again this week, but with additional questions. Mm-hmm. So last week we covered a number of them, and we're going to start off this week with how do you know if the fees in your portfolio are too high? That's a common question, or at least a common thought that people have. And I'll lead that off by saying, when you sit down with the Wealth Guardians and you're going through a planning process to make sure that you've got all of your I's dotted and your T's crossed in preparing for retirement, one of the topics that we discuss and at length is fees on your current portfolio. The reason we do that is because, and we do this in the second appointment, is because by and large, people do not have a good sense of what the total fees are that they're paying. Now, when you go to a restaurant, you get an itemized little receipt there. You can see what you paid for. You can see what the tax is and what the drink was and all of that. When it comes to having an advisor and the statements, and you look at your statements and you try to deduce what kind of fees you're paying, it's not that easy.
No, it's not.
And it's by regulation, there's a lot of things that could be done to improve that regulation-wise that Congress is just not doing. So you have an advisor fee, most likely, unless you have like an E-Trade account and you're doing all the trades yourself. You likely have an advisor fee, which can run anywhere from 10 basis points up to 225 basis points. Or for somebody not in the used to our lingo, that would mean 0.1% up to 2.25%. You've got a money manager fee. Not everybody has that, but a lot of people have a money manager fee. That's on top of the advisor fee. Typical money manager fee could be 1%. And then, Doug, we've got mutual funds. We're not big fans of mutual funds here at the Wealth Guardians. And one, they're very cookie cutter. They're designed for novice investors, not really designed for an advisor who knows what they're doing. And you kind of like I've made the comparison of like Hamburger Helper. You wouldn't expect to go to a restaurant where you've got a professional cooking for you and them using Hamburger Helper. Same kind of comparison. Hamburger Helpers for convenience for novice chefs, and mutual funds are the same way. So mutual funds are expensive in two ways. One, there's an expense fee on that, flat fee that you know what you're paying. You can see that in the prospectus. But then there's also something called hidden fees. Tell everyone about what a hidden fee is.
So hidden fees are basically associated with trading costs and how often the money manager turns over the portfolio. Those you cannot see. You have to have special software like we use that goes in and ferrets out those fees so that you can actually see what you're paying. And Brice said a moment ago, we don't use mutual funds, and we don't because they're expensive. Even if you have mutual funds at Vanguard, which is the low-cost provider for mutual funds, the internal hidden fees are there. And, generally what we try to do with our clients is when they come to see us is cut their fees in half. We compare our fees to your current fees side by side so you can see it black and white.
Right.
And, it's amazing. People's eyes really, their mouths drop and their eyes wide open sometimes.
Well, what do we call that second appointment? We've given it a nickname over the years.
Yeah, the eye opener.
The eye-opening appointment, because we are revealing to people most often for the first time what the grand total of their fees are when you're adding up the advisor fee, the money manager fee, the mutual fund fee, the hidden fees, meaning the trading fees as we were talking about. And then there's yet another cost, and not technically a fee, I suppose, but it's a cost, cash drag. And talk about what cash drag is, because a lot of people have never even heard of this.
Again, it's associated with mutual funds. Basically, cash drag is a phenomenon. All mutual funds are required to have cash on hand because they don't know from day to day who's going to call up and say, hey, sell me out with my cash. So they got to keep cash at the ready.
They have to. This is a regulation.
Yes. So that cash is sitting there making nothing.
Yep.
Right? So it is a drag on your overall portfolio performance. It's not a fee per se, but it is a drag on performance.
And keep in mind, so that portion is sitting there in the mutual fund in cash, and you're still paying the advisor fee, perhaps the money manager fee, and the mutual fund expense on that cash portion. So yeah, it's a lag of performance due to you sitting on some cash there. Again, something that people are not aware of. So the question comes, how do you know if the fees in your portfolio are too high? You have to do the research to figure them out. We have a good software, as you said, Doug, that is not inexpensive for us to use. We do have to lease it out on a quarterly basis, but we know that it is worth it for our clients and ourselves to be able to fully deduce what the costs are in somebody's portfolio. Because if we're going to make recommendations to change their portfolio up, either get their risk aligned more properly or whatnot, we want to know what the fees are that they're currently paying so that we can compare that to the fees that we know that they're going to be paying for our portfolio.
Yeah, it's amazing. Clients will go back to their old advisor to say, hey, this is what I found out you're charging me. And they'll go, oh, no, we're not charging you that much. We'll only charge you 1%. It says hidden costs. But
so they're referring to the advisor. We'll go back and refer to just their advisor fee. And they're completely overlooking the mutual fund fee, the hidden fees, and the cash drag, which is all plays a part of it.
And the software we use is called Y Charts. And it uses data from Thomson Siegel and Morningstar to be able to ferret out all these hidden costs.
That's right. That's right. If you're just joining us, just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray. In the studio this morning is Brice Payne and Doug Ray. And we're continuing our topic from last week. How do you know when you're approaching retirement? You start forming a lot of questions. How do I know this? How do I know that? And we're trying to give you answers on how you know something. And so we got done talking about how do you know if the fees in your portfolio are too high? One other one that we're not going to talk about here, but I think that is a question is, how do I know what kind of taxes that I'm going to be facing? And Doug, we have an answer for that one because we've got our taxes and retirement seminar coming up. And that is on Tuesday, October 3rd and Thursday, October 3rd and Tuesday, October 8th. And there's no cost or obligation. Speaking of fees, there's no cost or obligation to attend our seminar. But let me say this. If you're approaching retirement, you've never filed for Social Security, you're not on Medicare, you've had probably one source of income for most of your life, maybe two. Well, that all goes toward your earned income. I'll ask you, have you ever heard of provisional income? Most of you have never even heard of that. That is going to be something that is going to be extremely pertinent in your life when you retire and you file for Social Security. It determines how much of your Social Security is taxed. 0% of it, 50% of it, or 85% of it. Provisional income determines what tier you will fall in Medicare, whether you're paying the low-cost Medicare, the mid-cost, or the high-cost Medicare. All comes down to provisional income. We want to make sure that you are doing that, doing all you can for taxes to mitigate them as much as possible properly. If you have never sat through one of our tax and retirement seminars and you're getting ready to retire or you're approaching retirement, highly encourage you to come in and sit down for this. You do have to register. Even though there's no cost or obligation, you do have to sit down. So again, it's Thursday, October 3rd and Tuesday, October 8th at our office in Clemens. And it's 6:30 p.m., no cost or obligation, but you do got to give us a call. So here's how you register. 336-391-3409. 336-391-3409. You can also go to our website, thewealthguardians.com, and click on the events tab. Now, we got to get to a break here. And as we like to do before we go to a break, we're going to ask Doug a trivia question here. Doug, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. On September 21st, 1961, this Boeing military helicopter took flight for the first time. It's been most commonly used it is the most commonly used of all military helicopters, and it is used both in conflict situations and medical evacuations, both domestically and abroad. What helicopter is having its 63rd birthday this weekend?
Interesting question.
All right, there you go. Well, stick around for the answer to that trivia question and see if we stumped Doug this week. This is Brice Payne. With me is Doug Ray, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And this is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. And this is 96.7 FM WTOB. News Talk 94.5 WPTI. 96.7 FM WTOB. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardian Show, where we help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm Brice Payne in the Wealth Guardian studio this weekend, along with Doug Ray. And in this second segment, we're going to continue our discussion on how do you know, asking the right questions when you're approaching retirement. How do you know? Now, before we answer the trivia question that we dropped on Doug here, I've got two questions for you. Are you planning to retire? Okay. Have you met with a retirement income certified professional who's also a fiduciary? If not, I'm going to invite you right now to take us up on a complimentary review of your current situation. So as certified retirement planning specialists, we're going to put together a customized written plan with strategies for both portfolio allocation, income distribution, also Social Security filing and tax efficiency, with the additional benefit of often reducing both the risk and fees of your current plan. So if you put aside at least $400,000 and you want to take us up on this no cost, no obligation review, give us a call, 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. Or go to thewealthguardians.com. That's thewealthguardians.com to learn more. Let us show you in black and white how to retire the job and keep the paycheck. Okay, so now let's get back to that trivia question, Doug. I tried to find one playing off of your military experience and you being an aviator in the past. So here's the question again. On September 21st, 1961, this Boeing military helicopter took flight for the first time. It's been the most commonly used of all military helicopters, and it is used in both conflict situations and medical evacuations, domestically and abroad. What helicopter is having its 63rd birthday this weekend?
Well, I'm leaning towards the workhorse of the Vietnam War. Don't know if it was made by Boeing, but I'm also the Huey.
A little bit earlier in time than the Huey. Huey was a little bit earlier. This is the CH-47, aka the Chinook.
Chinook, yeah.
The Chinook is the workhorse. Yeah, a little bit bigger helicopter than the Huey was. But all right, that's a fun little fact there about aviation and playing on Doug's experience in the Navy there, hunting those communist submarines out there in the Atlantic coast. All right, so let's go back now to our main topic, how do you know? And we've got a couple here to go through, but I wanted to get to this one first. How do you know, Doug, if you should buy an annuity for retirement income? And annuity, that's that big A word that a lot of people have heard a lot about before coming to a financial planner. And some of that information is very accurate, and some of that information is not necessarily relevant to all annuities or is just flat out wrong. pension, if you choose to take a pension when you retire, that monthly income, that's an annuity. We all have, everyone who's over 67 years old all has another annuity, 100% of us, and we're American citizens. That's Social Security. So let's not let the word confuse us, what annuity is.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most misunderstood investment tool out there because there's 4 types.
Okay.
People confuse them all the time.
They lump them all together.
Yeah, and you got a multi-billionaire advisor who spends hundreds of millions of dollars every year on advertising that says, I hate annuities and you should too. Well, that's just crazy to say stuff like that. The fact of the matter is this. We do use annuities in our planning, but we use them as a bond replacement. And we specifically use a fixed index annuity.
Very different animal than a variable annuity.
Absolutely. Variable annuities have all the risk of the market and are extremely fee.
Mm-hmm. And they only really work in one particular way in the end, is to take income off of it. Yeah. You're saying goodbye to that lump sum that you put into it. And those are all kind of negatives.
No, I've never really been a believer in these riders that have that
lifetime income
payout, like a pension. Because here's what's happening. If you turn that thing on, you're just paying yourself your own money first.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to run out of your actual equity in that account before you get into the insurance company's pocket and start getting that pension. If all we did is try to find good, solid, fixed indexed annuities that have good growth potential,
little fees,
or no fees, just take withdrawals out of them like you would any other account to supplement your retirement.
Right. And the whole purpose of fixed index annuities is to protect somebody from the downside risks of the market. Most fixed index annuities, and I don't want to say this is a blanket statement for all of them, but for most fixed index annuities, at least the ones that if we lean on one for portfolio allocation, this is the kind that we're going to use, have zero downside risk to them.
Right.
And very little, if any, fees, period. And as you say, it is just that part of the portfolio that would normally be in bonds to protect you from the downside risk. Bonds have a stability factor to them, though they're not real stable these days.
You take an indexed annuity and you couple it up on the equity side with what we use is ETFs,
mm-hmm.
stocks, to keep your portfolio fees low and also your risk low, because on our equity side, we have stop loss protection on those accounts. And so far, it's worked pretty well.
It has worked very well for our clients. We like to think that would work well for others out there as well. But in order for us to determine that, we'd have to sit down and take a look at your overall situation and see what calls for it to, based on your risk tolerance and your income needs in retirement, what your expenses are, what your tax situation looks like. All of that plays a role in us deciding what your portfolio should look like. And if something like a fixed index annuity would play any role in it at all. As you said, equities are something else that we use. Structured notes are another item that we've become more popular in recent years for good reason. So that's the answer to the question. How do you know if you should get into an annuity? Well, talk to a fiduciary retirement specialist. And that's what we are here. We're fiduciaries, which means any recommendations that we make based on our licenses and certificates has to be in our client's best interest. And Doug, there is that same advertiser that you referred to a minute ago. They'll say, no, we don't do commission products. We're fiduciaries. One has nothing to do with the other. It's a nice little way they tried to paint that into the same picture. One has absolutely nothing to do with the other. You can be a fiduciary and also still work with insurance products like long-term care or fixed index annuities.
Listen, I'll add to that. If you're not using long-term care, life insurance, you're not being a holistic.
That's correct. And so you're almost you're trying to play the game with one hand tied behind your back in that sense. All right, very good. If you are just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray and Brice Payne, and we're continuing our conversation all the way from last weekend. How do you know? So if you're getting ready for retirement, a lot of questions start popping up. How do you know this? How do you know that? And people want to know. How do I know that? Well, we're trying to give you the answers to that right now. So the next one we want to talk about here, Doug, is how do you know if your retirement savings are on track? And I'll give you the short answer, and then I'll let you take over.
Okay.
Math.
Yeah. Math, that's it. It's pure simple.
It's that simple of a word, but there's a lot of calculations that go into it.
You know, people come into us and go through our 4-part process, and by the time they get through that, they're going to know. I mean, because we dissect everything for them. We take their expenses, we take their accounts, and we do all this math you're talking about. And in the third meeting, that's when they actually see it black and white on the spreadsheet, and you'll know without a doubt, can you make it to and through retirement with what you got?
That's right. And a lot of times that answer is a positive answer. Some people come into us thinking they've got to work for 5 more years before they can retire. And we can show them that, no, you've actually done a good job of saving up to this point. Now, there's certain knowns that we have when we go through the planning process. We know how much assets somebody already has. We know how much they're making. If they're diligent, we know how much they're spending. Those are the knowns that we can plug into these equations. But there are some unknowns as well. What's your average rate of return going to be on your investments over the long period of time? That's an assumption we're going to have to make, and we try to always err on the conservative side. We don't want to shoot for the moon and then fall short of that. So we try to underestimate that. And then if it does end up being better, well, then it's just gravy on top of what the outcome is for our software. Another assumption we have to make is, what's the COLA going to be on Social Security? Cost of living adjustment. The average COLA over the last 75 years is 2.75%. So we're going to use that. And then another assumption that we have to make is inflation. What's that rate of inflation going to be? Doug, you know what the 100-year average of inflation is?
It's 3.2%.
You got it, 3.25%. So that's what we're going to use for the rate of inflation. I know it's higher than that right now, but it was lower than that for a decade. And we still used whatever the 100-year average was, which was higher than that. Once we plug all that in there, we can start giving our clients a pretty good idea of what their financial situation is going to look like through retirement. Can they retire now? Could they retire last year? Can they spend more in retirement? Will they meet their legacy goals? How much are they going to pay Uncle Sam now and through retirement? So that's a lot to calculate there, but that's the short answer. How do you know? Math.
Math, yeah. Honestly, I've been doing this, and you've been doing this so long too, that I pretty much have a good idea after the very first meeting if everything's going to be okay.
We can start getting that picture pretty clearly.
And if you come to us and you say you spend $8,000 a month and you only have $200,000 set aside for retirement, you're in trouble.
Unless there is some other form of income that you've got in retirement. Maybe you're a landlord or something like that. But if you're just relying on Social Security, that's it. So want to pitch one more time here, Doug. We're doing our taxes and retirement seminar. We do a couple of seminars a year. Right now, coming up on Thursday, October 3rd, and then again on Tuesday, October 8th, taxes and retirement. I can't emphasize this enough. Your tax situation, once you retire and once you file for Social Security, changes dramatically. Your relationship with Uncle Sam and the IRS is going to be a lot more complex. If you think it's complex now, it's going to be more complex once you retire. There's a lot of rules and nuances to taxes in retirement, and we want to go over that with you so you can be prepared. How do you attend our seminar? Well, there's no cost or obligation, but you do have to let us know that you're coming. So you give us a call at 336-391-3409, 336-391-3409. It's at our office in Clemens on, again, Thursday, October 3rd and Tuesday, October 8th. You can also go to our website, thewealthguardians.com, and click on the events tab. No cost, no obligation, but we do have to know that you're coming so we can reserve a seat for you. Lynn will answer that phone and be happy to take your information. I highly encourage you, if you're planning on retiring, to sit through that and just learn. That's all it's about, is just learning. Unfortunately, that's going to wrap it up for this week. We're out of time. We do hope the rest of your weekend is everything you want it to be. This is Brice Payne along with Doug Ray. This show is The Wealth Guardians, where we help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And I want to remind you, sound financial plans do not create themselves. This is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. This is 96.7 FM WTOB.